Hello. Good morning. Good evening, wherever you may be in the world. My name is Brian Jennings. This is my channel. It's dedicated to discussing the nature of my life, the nature of reality, the nature of my relationship with show business, Quentin Tarantino and the movie Critic. I don't want to talk about it anymore. It doesn't, it's easy. It's easy to understand. He hates me. He wants me to die. That's, right? He doesn't want to pay me for my scene, right? And there's nothing that I can do about that. I'd say it's a shame. It's a real shame. Because I know we could have been close. We have a lot in common. But I chose my side and he chose his, didn't he? And so what do I mean? I mean that he saw it as an initiation, and I don't fault him for that. I had no clout. I had no career. But I saw it as the same thing. And all I had to do was bark like a dog. I know that. All I had to do was say, hey, this letter's for you. And he would have taken it. Right? All I had to do was say, I have a question about cinema speculation. I was prepared. I had 10 questions, 10 good questions. Right? Such as, I'm kidding, I'm not going to. But he courted me, right, in the psychic crucible of the mind's eye, and I awarded the highest magic in show business. And I'll always regret that. I'll always feel guilty about that, because I know that he loved me and he trusted me in that moment. That was him accepting me as a theater actor, accepting me as a classical actor, wanting to play Hamlet. And it's all because of my scene. It's all because of the scene. I mentioned this yesterday, but I suppose I sense a sea change, right? Like a pitch and refraction. As a result of my recent correspondences, I wrote a letter to Dan Aloni, Christopher Nolan's agent, and I wrote a letter to Trey Anastasio and David Berlinski. And so they're not show business impresarios, but they're two of my heroes, though I would say that I now see them in a corrupted light. I don't appreciate either of them like I used to. Right now they're neck deep in it as well. Right? And so what do I mean when I say that? I mean that while I was on the street in LA, right, doing everything that I could, being subjected to, clairvoyant psychic torture every day. I said, I'm gonna write David Berlinski, right, and Salman Rushdie and Thomas Pynchon, right? And so he loved that, because then that gives him an excuse to say, no, he's a crazy guy, right? Like his whole design all this time has not been to forgive me, to offer me a path to forgiveness, because he's not interested in forgiveness, right? It's been to destroy me. That's it. And so I wrote my letters, and I don't know about Salman Rushdie and Thomas Pynchon, but I had written David Berlinski before Tribeca. 2 weeks before. I felt that I was obsessing over Quentin. I said, I gotta get Quentin out of my head, you know? And so I sent the Discovery Institute a letter to David Berlinski about how much I appreciated, perhaps that was the second letter I sent him. I sent him one before I read the books, and then right before Tribeca after I read the books. And of course the books are The Devil's Delusion, Atheism and Its Scientific Pretensions, as well as Science After Babel. Right? And I recommend those books. Science After Babel is a little more technical. It's a little harder to follow if you're not. Mathematics it's muddy in my mind. Like the symbols and shit confuses me. You can explain a mathematical formula to me, and I would probably have some sort of crude, rudimentary understanding. But when I see, delta over theta multiplied by 1/2 zeta, it doesn't mean anything to me. And so we all have to know our limitations. I can tell you about Hamlet, but I can't tell you about math, calculus. But both of those books are wonderful as far as the limitations of science, right? He's a very sage, wise man, David Berlinski. Anyway, to come back to the story. I wrote all of these people as best as I was able. And I suspect that David Berlinski wrote him, because I asked him to help. And of course, he threw me right under the bus. And maybe he threw me under the bus immediately. I don't rightfully know. I don't know what he said. Right? But the reason that I suspect, right, that he said something to both David Berlinski and Trey Anastasio, who I wrote maybe a month later, as a to try to rectify Tribeca. Right? Tribeca had like 500 people. I thought, well, if I could get Fish to let me play with them with 25,000, maybe that's enough. And so the reason that I suspect that he wrote both of them is because it was around January the 4th or the 5th that it was revealed to me that he has no daughter. His daughter's a little girl, and I've talked a lot about that. And so, at that time, I sent an email. These were the first emails that I sent. All the other letters have been physical letters. But I sent an email to the Discovery Institute as well as to Fish. And I said, this man is evil. I want you to show me everything that you received about me. Any sort of email that you've received that involves me. That's all. And so, right, the reason that I suspect he slandered me is that neither of them said anything. And so why do I say that? I mean that neither of these characters are show business impresarios. Like show business is full of assholes. Like we all get like, I stick my nose up, poo-poo, right? That's like, right? Like it's easy to see that. Though I think that's, as far as my scene in relation to William Morris Endeavor, it's ridiculous now. But neither of these cats operate on that frequency. Right? They're both famous, but they can both walk down the street. They're not. Quentin can't walk down the street without getting harangued. And he probably does, but he doesn't. Right? But my point is that if the truth of the situation, knowing that I've spent thousands of dollars on Fish tickets over the course of my adult life, and spent however much money on David Berlinski's books as well, and watched I've spent so much equity and time watching him, right? If the truth of the matter was just that I sent letters and I'm mentally ill, right? Why wouldn't they reply, scan the letters I sent them, send them to me, and say, we wish you well. We can tell that you're struggling and you're suffering, right? That's right? That's a compassionate viewpoint, right? Rooted in love for your fans and your audience, right? But if Quentin, right, sent some of my letters out of context and is hovering over them like a psychic vampire, like he hovers over me, and saying, no, if you show him, I'll sue you, or some such, right? He really can't subject them to the treatment that he's subjecting me to, because then he proves me right, that he subjects, like present tense, me to. Right? Then they're kind of between a rock and a hard place, is my point. That despite the fact that they might want to show me, because right? They want to see it brought to a resolution, right? If they're being bullied, then they don't really have much of a choice. And honestly, I don't buy that for 1 second. I don't buy that for 1 second. Like, what's he, you know, like he has no case. He has no case. Like, he sent them the material. Like, it's theirs to do with as they see fit. Right? And so my point, to bring it all back to the present, is that the last letter that I sent to David Berlinski and Trey Anastasio, as well as the letter that I sent to Christopher Nolan's agent, Dan Aloni, right? Perhaps they've finally broken through. I've been saying the same thing the whole time. Right? As far as the ugliness of it all. And now that I have this clairvoyant lady, Deborah Katz, and perhaps she doesn't think about me at all. Right? But I suspect that Trey Anastasio has one or two near him. Right? David Berlinski, I know he gets it. He gets it. Right? Life is a mind conception. Life is a psychic intellection. Right? There's nothing else that's ever been occurring. So, now I'm working on my model. I'm doing my best to move on, right? There's never a moment where we're not, boom, right there next to each other. Very close. Right? And I suspect that they get something out of it. That there is a palpable darkness, right? And they plague my mind with notions of evil. Ugly evil. That I'm not, right? They want me to say it so that I'll seem a certain type of way. And I know that there's nothing I can do. That whether it's true or not is irrelevant. Right? That they're, right? That, like, if they take action against me, right, then they're pure evil. It doesn't, like, that's all that matters. I want him to be happy. I never would have given him permission to crawl all the way into my mind if I knew that he was just, right, conspiring towards seeing me expire. And so how do I know that? Right? Like, if we say that remote viewing is real, right? If we say that you can find someone with your mind, then I have this law. It's called the square law, where every time, and I'm putting pieces of a square right now onto this poster board, that every time you remote view someone, the first time, if you do it to any individual living, right, that you are now 4 times closer as far as your psychological and psychic connection. And then the second time, you're 9 times stronger. And then the third time, you're 16 times stronger. On and 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 on. Right? And so, if, as in the case of now, right, someone spends upwards of 200 hours remote viewing someone and creates a very strong bond, psychologically, spiritually, psychically, to that other person, and has no intentions of spending any time with them, then they have created a dangerous psychological condition for everyone involved, including themselves. Therefore, the goal was always for me to expire, right, by my own hand. And so now all that's left is pure evil. And I hope that that's not true. Right? But despite the fact that it's been better the last few days, I can't stop talking about it until I know that it's going to be better forever. Right? And so I guess that's through money. I don't know. I don't really know. Right? He doesn't want to look me in the eye if I don't sue him. And of course, he doesn't want this to go to trial. He doesn't want me to say the things that I've been saying on this channel to a jury of 12 people. Because I can call Deborah Katz, I can call any number of clairvoyants who can say, intellectually, this is valid. Whether or not it's true, I can't say, but it is true. Everything I've been saying is true. Right? I suspect that everything that he's been doing really is just him being a bully. Because he knows that I have no resources. He knows that I have no money. And he resents me for turning my back on his wealth and his fame over pride, which was stupid. I acknowledge that. All over a letter. Right? But I'm a writer. Right? I'm talking about it because I don't want to die. Right? And all he can say is that I'm not well. Right? Like I have 130,000 words of a novel that tells a very specific story. Right? And I offer, hopefully some sort of sage, intelligent wisdom on here. And all he can say is, oh, he's lost his mind. Right? He can't deny Tribeca. He can't do that. Because Robert De Niro's in on the joke. Right? So, I suspect he has a document that he shows people, but that's a lie. That's a lie. It's not real. Because if he sent me a document, I would have clutched that and said, oh, this is great. This is really exciting. Like he's giving me a shot. He's giving me a real shot. No games. Instead, right? He turned it into a mind game. And I don't want to give people my mind. I don't want to give someone my mind. Right? Fame or no fame. It's my mind. So I suppose I'll go. See what's good in your life. All of life emerges out of a divine intellection. And when you meditate and you be still, right, you live close to God, which is not a creature in creation. It is an abstract intellectual quality or principle. And so the geometric forms that you see me constructing, right, hearken to the structure of space, which is why I make them, which makes me a better clairvoyant. Like, comment, subscribe, share. Don't forget to hit the notification button. God bless.